I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only one. No one likes being lied to. You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I wanna burn all the bridges between us. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head. I just need to clear my head. I've been stuck on your memory, but it's not like I need it. And we may have some history, but we don't have to repeat it. You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I'm gonna burn all the bridges between us. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head. 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 I just need to. I just need to clear my head. I just need to. I just need to clear my head. I just need to. I just need to clear my head. I just need to. I just need to clear my head. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head. I just need to clear my head. I just need to clear
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 8 of One Chapter Wonder. I'm actually really excited to get back into this, and I'm really excited for the readings we've got today. Sunfire Salvager, of course, you're already here, and guess whose reading is first up? Spoilers, it's yours. Okay, so today we've got a couple of things happening. We've got 3 readings as per usual. We've got I did not check my notes. Destin, hello. Oh my god, I'm not allowed to fangirl. But I probably will, because I'm up to 11, chapter 11 of Tavern. Boy, we'll talk later. So, okay, so today we've got a psychological thriller, we've got some military action, and we have a post-apocalyptic sci-fi, just by a little old someone that I'm very excited to actually read the whole chapter. I've done your first, bit, which was really fun. So I'm excited to see how the rest of that chapter turned out. Before we get started, I actually have some book mail, which is really exciting. So we're going to unwrap that first. I like getting parcels and then leaving them to do on stream, especially if I know that they're a book, and especially if I know that it was someone from this show. So, and I'm so shit at this. Every time I've gotten a parcel, I've like waved my own address around on screen. So I'm trying to get better. I don't know what Ozpost did to it. I think they like chewed on it before they actually sent it. I'm just making a mess of this. Okay. Ooh. Ooh. Hey, hey, hey. It's Omega Genesis Emancipation by Baart Groot. So, it's based in Adelaide. Mr. Groot, are you from South Australia? It's a post-apocalyptic dystopian about my home city. Yay! Oh my god, dude! Thank you so much for sending me this. This was the darker read from episode 7. What's that last episode? Oh my god! So I'm excited to see it get better. Get lighter. I want to see things get fixed. That's the main thing I love about dystopians is seeing everything like stop being shit. So, hey. Oh god, I can't believe this is set in Adelaide. What the fuck? I wonder if he knew that I was from Adelaide when he submitted this, because he didn't say a word. I don't think he's here today. I'll message him. Oh my god. Sorry, I'll stop reading it. But yes, that looks absolutely beautiful. Like, look at this. This is gorgeous. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Groot. This is going up on the shelf. I've also got the Legends... It's all back to front. I've also got the Legends of Amare books by Mr. Bishop up there. So I'm getting like a little to-read pile from One Chapter Wonder. So Tavern was on top of it, and now I'm working my way down through. Right, and it totally is like weird to see. I wonder if in the city of Adelaide. Oh, what the fuck? That's so bizarre. This is weird. This is cool. Oh, he signed it. I just opened it. I'm so sorry. Hang on. It's really nice. Please accept this first edition as a token of my appreciation. Mr. Groot, thank you so much. Next time I'm down in Adelaide, we'll hang out. We'll go get a coffee or something. This sounds epic as shit. I'm sorry. I tend to turn pink when people are nice to me. So I don't turn pink very often. No, I'm joking. You guys are lovely to me. There's actually a giveaway going on for Her Crown of Fire right now, through another book blog over on Twitter. And so there's all these people saying really nice things about my book, be like, oh, it looks amazing, this sounds really good. And I just spent my whole morning just pink for no reason. Okay, that's fucking cool. And I love paperbacks. Paperbacks are my jam. Like, you give me a paperback of your book, I'll probably fucking read it. Because, like, is there anything better than sitting on the couch and, like, reading? No. The answer is no. And I love my Kindle, and I love the accessibility of my Kindle, but it doesn't have the same pizzazz, I suppose. It doesn't have the same feel. I don't know. All right. I'm going to turn my own music down because I'm deafened. That's probably why I'm shouting. I'm super looking forward to your book. Oh my god. Oh my god. I think it's less than 3 months now. And I'm... Immediately, my palms started sweating just then. Because it's really frightening to me. Even though, like, I signed... I sold that book in May last year. So for it to be coming out in like less than 3 months is really fast for the publishing industry. And I kind of feel like I haven't had enough time to be impatient, because I'm not impatient at all. I could wait a little longer. You like ebooks, but you can finish paperback a lot easier. Absolutely, my guy. If I had the paperback of Tavern, it would have been done like immediately. The only thing that's slowing me down is the fact that I have it on my Kindle, and I just don't I look at screens all day, and just my reading time, I feel like I shouldn't be looking at a screen, but sometimes that's just the only way to read content, and so gotta do what you gotta do. All right, I need to get straight into it because have people coming over today. You would totally send me a copy. My palms again. They're sweating again. We'll talk off stream, dude. If you're actually serious, just send me a DM and we'll work something out because I would cry so much. I just reread the whole thing again. Anything I read on the Kindle, I just read again on the paperback because I love it so much. I do, and no, okay, I can't turn this into like a tavern fangirl episode because that's all I want to do right now. That would be lovely and I'd really appreciate it, and I'm trying really hard not to freak out, and I'm turning pink again, I can feel it. It's fine. Zen. Look at me, I'm turning pink. You should know as well that the buddy read chat, that yes, we have to fanboy over Dave, and it's going to be really easy to fan about because it's going to be amazing. But the buddy read chat for all of us reading Tavern is just like pages and pages of us being like, what the fuck, this is amazing. So I'll send you some choice screenshots. You're going to blush? Dude, I'm going to blush. All right, well, you're actually first up, Dave, so sit tight, tell the apprentice to fuck off. Oh man, okay, we're going to bring that down. And not so gently, just turn that off. I don't know if you guys could hear it, so that may have been nothing at all. Ooh, I've read the opening of this. Look how pink I've turned. Destin, this is all your fault. Okay, so first up we have our post-apocalyptic. Part 1, The Broken Gear. This is the Sandcastles of Atlantis, Chapter 1. The Dry Atlantic Salvaging Company. I'm so excited right now. His boots sank into the hot sand while facing the ultimate entity of absolute desert. Windswept dunes painted in shades of pale red rolled onward like a petrified sea into the endless horizon, where spindrift vaults against their crests in translucent veils. To believe that the dunes never moved was to be ignorant of the desert, to be oblivious to the strength of the abrasive caress of the wind, to disregard the natural order and processes at work. This feels very familiar. The misanthropic sun glared with ruinous light, cooking everything it touched, bleaching it of its colour. Mirages distorted in the distance, dangling pools of water at the edge of the horizon, never to be truly grasped. If you cry, I'll cry. Don't cry. Natural life was devoid here, save for the bellowing of the ominous winds, the whispering of the sand grinding against the coarse, impermanent dunes, and dust devils dancing across those lands of extinction might have suggested something supernatural to those weary enough to believe. The sky, which had been clear of clouds for most of the day, grew orange with the onset of twilight as the dunes became vitreous, glistening before the last pillars of brilliant sunlight with royal prisms that were too difficult to endure with the naked eye. This is so amazing. Soon, the prisms and disruptions of heat would die, and the frigid chill of night would sweep across the vast wastes, and the stars would marble the heavens and sparkle like gemstones, beacons lost to the depths of the fathomless universe, lost like steel in the sand. He could already see the orbital satellite keeping them imprisoned, looming like a dragon against the brass-shining face of the pale moon and her golden cities. Glowing tails of starships scuttle around the moon, and her many ports going on about a life he would never know. Behind him rests the crawler, moaning as it idled, loose nuts and bolts and poorly supported pipes vibrating with rhythm. The massive machine of rust and steel and industrial imagination was his only way to cross dry Atlantic, for a purpose against a miserable life that was otherwise forfeit, and the crew of salvagers, young Sunrust, so chose to travel and work amongst hovered behind and beside. Each one of them stared beyond him, taking in the grim sight of the wind-shaped valleys of nothing in these deepest reaches of the desert. Some of them had seen this great vastness before, felt the soft oceanic sand spraying in the wind, shifting around their boots with little to no effort, unable to endure any weight. Others were devouring all they could with sombre reverence, silently praying or controlling a paramount agoraphobia. And if it weren't for the wind and the crawler with its lonely mechanical song, There would have been a maddening dead silence adding to such an intoxicating sense of desolation. They had been mesmerized, completely enthralled by the ghostly spindrift and the brilliance of the twilight against glowing particles. They had become silent, standing motionless by the awesome stature of the desert, with the same appreciation as a welcoming fire danced on a cold night, or rain sometimes fell from the heaven. But it was truly that sickening sensation of desolation captivating them, staring back at them with a hunger too intense to ignore. Sun had seen enough, unwilling to let the emptiness paralyze him any further, and turned back to face his companions, though he'd become just as transparent to them along with the dying signs of the Badlands that strangled these lonesome borders. Tall, sun-bleached formations of the continental shelf jutted upwards behind them, looming like a grand monument above the climbing sand in its forever conquest. There had been something about facing these pale wastes that just made him want to return to Sahara Revival Outpost and live out his days in the water mines or selling tea and herbs in his parents' shop, or melt recovered scrap metal down into ingots later shipped off into space. Cool. It was a certain fear that he tried to dismiss. Nothing in this world scared Sun more than the malice of Mother Nature, considering mankind's own depravity. But with his elder, second-born brother Red, and his eyes ever vigilant, Sun found peace with salvaging, solace and purpose crossing the deserts, and combing for scrap metal and lost relics of a world long gone, sifting for circuitry that could be broken down, protecting it, selling it, the cycle repeating. As he had expected, Red's dark silhouette lingered atop the crawler facing the way they had come, with a rifle held at ease, seemingly far more concerned with what lays behind than ahead. Red was careful, and their boss liked that. Had an expert eye for picking out discrepancies had an expert eye for picking out discrepancies amidst the dancing distortions. It was something their father and grandfather had ingrained in them against many other valuable skills of survival. Sun wrapped his hands around the wide bandolier that sideswiped his wiry chest. Large bullets capable of atomizing a man's skull gleamed in the dying lights, and the strong gusts of wind pressed his clothing tighter to his slender shape. The sand was abrasive and sharp like needles shooting through the wind against his exposed arms as he marched towards the machine. It stung, but it was a mild inconvenience he had grown used to before he could even walk. He kept his head down as he walked into the faces of the gales, with his crimson goggles pressed so tight over his eyes that flutes from the seals would be bruised into his cheeks. His eyes were focused, watching each step carefully across the loose earth for rocks that threatened to twist his ankle, and crevices shrouded by sand as he climbed back towards the crawler. Good morning, Drugsy. How you doing? The crawler that stood superimposed against the sloped shelves of the great old continent was an impressive feat of apocalyptic engineering. It was once a salvaged cargo barge, the kind that would ship dry goods up narrow, shallow rivers during the old times, before the impact and the long silence. Ooh, world building. You're good? That's good to hear, man. It was small and retrofitted with a platoon of massive continuous tracks set on an independent suspension system that were nearly 2/3 of the height of the machine itself. Its engines were nuclear, stolen from the mighty Sigma Tech Corporation, and beat-up arrays hanging off the backside of the bridge connected to old satellites still in orbit relayed positioning. A boom crane hung over the bow, and barbed wire had been wrapped thrice around the railings. Rust clung to it like a fungus. Oh, it's because I'm on YouTube, Drugsy. That'd be why it didn't, that's why I didn't put it in the Discord. Rust clung to it like a fungus. Pieces of metal were welded over bullet holes like scabs and grotesque scars. The port windows were smashed out, replaced with metal slats and used solely as a spot to put a rifle barrel through to ward off marauders. And it was home. A sanctuary from the sand and wind, from predators in the night and the knives on their grasp. Sun reached for the hammock ladder that hung from the starboard side and scaled to the deck of the machine where the mechanical genius, master engineer, and boss, John Woodbine, leant up against the barbed wire railing with a piece of leather to protect his arm, dispassionately studying the barren and forlorn landscape. He was chewing his cheek and bottom lip in one reciprocating motion, calculating always. "She'll hold," Woodburn affirmed, though his frown told that he was just convincing himself. He said it with enough volume as though Sun were listening as he strolled by on his way for the greenhouse door, as though he needed convincing too. He turned to heel and followed his young employee, eager to boast about his handiwork. I designed this thing. I know what she'll take. The eggs should be a much smoother ride than the Badlands. He gently waved his hands outwards, signalling the anticipated smoothness of the ride. We'll crush sand instead of bouncing over. But we ain't gone this deep into dry Atlantic before, have we? Son considered him, eyes narrowing with skepticism and a slightly soured face. That's pretty soft sand. It is soft, he agreed with a sharp inhale, dragging sediment and salt into his nostrils. Ugh. Son smelled it too. It's all they ever smelled besides themselves. When he licked his lips, he could taste only salt. But that don't mean shit. She did well on Old Continent, crossing the mountains. We've gone to Southfield Way Station. We're farther than Southfield, ain't? Woodbine kissed his teeth. We'll find out soon enough just how we're going to do, he answered, the undefeated grin signalling that he successfully achieved a level of confidence to press on. It'll dig free from any ditch. If it don't, that crane will act as a winch. Son followed with dark eyes as Woodbine pointed to the crane at the front of the crawler. What if there ain't anything to rig up to? Sorry, I keep reading on because it's funny. Woodbine frowned with a sour glow as he threw his arms in the air as though the answer was obvious. You bury the goddamn hook. And the canyons, noted the young salvagers in a way that would surely agitate his boss. What about them? You let me worry about them. He tapped his outstretched thumb to his broad chest. Goddamn kid. He muttered with a scoff as he started climbing up the stairs. Son began to laugh at the grumbling of his boss. My pops always said, don't get nowhere you can't buy water. Why you think no one lives out there but nomads? Son's uneasy grin showed his dissatisfaction, and a cluster of brass plating his upper and lower teeth on the right side of his sun-leathered face. Woodbine released an annoyed grunt and a loathsome roll of his eyes. What else your pops say about that? I hear he's full of one-liners. Says, keep your last coin or a bullet for a cup of water. If you ain't find water, put the bullet in your head. Oh. Woodbine smirked and then chuckled as he shook his head. Son laughed too. How far away from the equator? Woodbine's ebony visage then distorted, and he raked his strong fingers through thick, burly dreadlocks and scoffed once more. We ain't driving at night yet. Not that close. Chill. We can drill for water, so don't worry about putting your last bullet in your head. We're going to find our fortunes out here. Ain't nothing good to pick through on old Africa. There's some good treasures out there, I promise you that. Anything's treasure, innit? Son rested against the bumper of the dune buggy, latched down securely to a small portion of the deck, as Woodbine shrugged, moving on up the rickety steps into the bridge, the heel of his boots banging with each footfall. Goddamn kid. Son had heard, followed by a growl of frustration that it all meant to be silent. He let out a hard laugh, much to the displeasure of his boss, an intoxicating laugh that could not be ignored. That was one thing he surely enjoyed, antagonizing his boss. It didn't help that his co-salvager, Fenris Boa, encouraged this behaviour. The old man was guilty of pestering Woodbine as well, with his quick wit and poorly misplaced jokes. He heard Woodbine snort as he entered through the bridge, which brought on more gut-twisting laughter, and the young salvager took the opportunity now to light a cigarette. As old King Sol began to dive deeper, the young salvager faced the wind with a tasseled shemagh wrapped around his tanned face, protecting that bohemian visage of his and the dark tattoos on his cheeks and nose from any more damage caused by what was left of the abrasive wind and ruinous light. Then, with the last few spears of light shooting from the western horizon, Son was approached by his brother. Red worked his goggles on over his eyes, wrapping them around the thick tendrils hanging from his face. A coarse brown beard, specked with sediment as though it was permanently embedded with earth, clung to his face where only a dark tattoo was visible under the curve of his left... Sorry. A coarse brown beard, specked with sediment as though permanently ebbed with earth, clung to his face where only a dark tattoo was visible underneath the curve of his left eye. We'll be long gone before them marauders catch up, Red stated with satisfaction in referring to a minor run-in outside the walls of Firewell's recycling plant, where a couple of buggies nipped at their heels like a pack of hungry coyotes and chased them farther than expected into the dust. However, such was to be expected when travelling near cities. I don't see him trying to come after us this far. Son nodded, grimacing behind the folds of his shemagh. We'll let the desert kill them, and if it don't, I'll kill them all, he growled threateningly, reaching down with his tattooed hand and wrapping it around the barrel of a rifle that had sat against a drum of lamp oil waiting for him. The 23-year-old salvager moved along the railing with his older brother, glaring out into the petrified waves of featureless sand as darkness set in, staring thoughtfully, wondering why they were still here, why they turned their backs on their homes for wild fortunes. The sound of mortar shells resounded in the back of his ears, the rebel bombs that desperately rained down over their home in the Sahara Revival outpost, with hope of freeing them from the grips of Sigma Tech. The recollected sounds brought his hair on his arms to stand erect. He remembered the rhyme, the one his mother used to comfort him. 1, 2, they're not for you. Their mother vehemently disapproved of them joining a salvaging crew, but their father supported them. He remembered the fight his parents had the day they announced their intentions, his mother's tears and then eventual acceptance, and his father handing over their great-granddad's crimson revolver to Red, their oldest brother wishing them luck. He wondered how the shop was faring. It was far enough outside the city on the winding terraced road out of the valley to avoid rebel bombs targeted at the porcelain fortress of the Sigmatech Corporation, but close enough to entice their contractors out on special trips. The bombs returned again. 3, 4, get under the floor. Sun blinked, his hand wrapped tight around the handle of his knife at his waist for security, if not for anything else. Red placed a firm hand on Sun's shoulder. Easy, brother. A fire burns bright within you, but don't let it eat you. We're better than that. That wasn't true. Sun snorted as his brows creased with concentration while rolling his neck to the left, as he felt the soothing release of pressure pop through his cervical spine. He could not judge himself civil, for there was no civilization on Earth, and he was smart enough to see it that way, or dumb enough to be passive towards it. So, loud car. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's all good. We're getting there. Sahara Revival Outpost was docile compared to the other cities that loom out of the rising sands of the colony, where anyone could be shot dead in the streets without a second thought for what little they had. Life was valued on desperation. A jug of dirty water or a pocket of pretty tarnished coins, a pair of good boots, but not much else. The cities ran themselves, for better or worse. Paradise in comparison to the territories controlled or under siege by murderous marauders and warlords who took what they wanted, how they wanted, living on an edge of profound desperation. Morality was a word only spoken amongst drunks in philosophy and ethics, described only ill deeds. Backstabbing came as a profession, and kindness had a price. He was just a product of his environment. We're all desperate. Red patted him on the back. Let's go eat. I'm sure Atlas has got something good cooking. We did just get paid after all. He smiled, his thumb up in the air. Sun smiled. He fell into step behind his brother, behind the thin greenhouse door, brushing against the lush gardens flowing in fresh fibrous scents and fresher fruit. The greenhouse led to the top deck door, which in turn broke into the humid terrarium of garden planters that occupied the first floor of the crawler. Fresh vegetables sprouted native to desert climates, poked up from soil planters secured to the floor. Herbs were collected on a tiered shelf before a window against the back of the crawler purposely cut and fitted with transparent plexiglass before they could afford to replace the last fluorescent light bulb that had burnt out. Hundreds of planters clustered in this small room and created a winding labyrinth with what could not fit in the greenhouse. The plants were cycled frequently from the inside of the machine to outside under the greenhouse light, watered regularly, and harvested when their gardener felt the plants had matured. A vast array of cables interacted with the planters attached to a water supply, lay on the floor like roots and vines, catching the feet anyone passing by who was not careful. Nes del Fuego, the master gardener, took great pride in his work, meticulously caring for each leaf, each sprout and bud, each vine and tendril to the point of pained obsession. He spread the compost by hand, spoke to the plants, and harvested them for canning or eating. An exhaust fan hung from the ceiling in the low centre of the room, surrounded by a railing that safeguarded the ledge cut in the floor to the lower level, pulling the foul odour of their livestock pens, the gardens, and the heat and humidity out of their dwelling, but remained an obnoxious squeal of bearings and old belts. So this is like a garden, this is like a city, farmhouse, garden, self-sufficient tank? Because that's the impression I'm getting. Ah! I closed out of it, there we go. Sun turned a corner around a row of planters and continued down a flight of steps while moving at Red 6. There were sudden jerks and jumps he had felt through the crawler floor that were more than likely rocks within its path. The incandescent lights that hung from cables on the bare steel ceiling swung constantly, and shadows became alive with dance, softly squeaking with each swing. He was so used to the supple bouncing, and noticed when the tremors weren't circulating through the base of his heavy boots. His nerves tingled when there were no vibrations, and when the machine was quiet, his ears would painfully ring with an affliction of tinnitus. Oh my god, I feel it. I know, right, Destin? It's amazing. Red led Sun onto the lower level where their livestock had been carefully housed. This room had been modified into a farm where a small number of chickens were being raised. They were separated into different pens that spanned the entire length of the small room, and it smelled of waste, and only did it smell once they broke away from the siege of vegetations in the gardens. On the left wall, smaller containment pens hefted its entire height, filled with large reptiles, insects, and desert rodents being grown to harvest. A door sat in the centre of the left wall that opened into a tightly packed utility corridor that twisted and turned to the steamy engine room, where several members of the crew claimed dominion, as well as their deep supply of water stored in a tank that would have once been used to store fuel. Ooh, I hope they cleaned that out. Blah. Barrels of rice, flour, and other dry goods were laid on the opposite side of the door from the pens, and stacked to the ceiling on the left wall as well, braced back by chains and a wall welded in place, so that no more than 2 barrels could be stacked side by side, a product of a profitable salvage. Sun was glad for that. They'd gotten too close to starvation last time. On the right side of the livestock room was another makeshift wall and a door that separated their supply room. Rows upon narrow rows of shelves were organised with the various tools needed to keep the crawler and their profession moving. Cutting blades, straps, rigging, tools, pipe, wire, and whatever else the crew deemed necessary for their work were stored. A small lathe with rust on the ways and chuck, and a tiny tabletop milling machine littered with metal chips were fastened in that room with a grinding wheel that had seen its best days before the asteroid hit Earth. Way to bury the world-building event. Okay, so we're on Earth. That was one of my questions. The man responsible for maintaining these animals sat quietly in a chair between the pens with his arms crossed over his potbelly. They called him Chrome, for the fake teeth in his round, simple face, and when he would smile, which he always did, an entire set of shining chrome teeth would glisten in the light, as though it emitted like a source of its own. He was a man of his late 40s, but retained the mind of a child that resonated outwardly only in the blank stare on his face. He had a kind heart, and Sun admired the way he cared for the animals as if they were his own children. Oh, I like him already, favourite character! Chrome smiled as Red and Sun passed him by, but said no word, only to return to his duties when he saw fit. They'd now come to face a steel door at the end of a short hallway, and entering into the belly of the crew quarters. Their fellow salvagers collected here within these dark walls. The hold was rather spacious, with the light fixtures doused, and missing bulbs where candles and small lamps kept it partially illuminated, and contained a platoon of bunks and hammocks as well as lockers. "Good morning, Mr. Fagan." Some of the lockers were homemade and riveted together poorly. A crude makeshift table and chairs centered the room, a small kitchen retrofitted into the very back wall where an exhaust fan pulled the stench of their filthy bodies and the toxic air from their lamps out of the crawler, which laboured over an induction oven that had been built inside of a steel drum. Inside, their last leg of lamb twisted on a small, hand-powered rotisserie. Yum! Now I'm hungry. They would eat as much of the leg as they could and turn the rest into jerky, just like the flanks of snake that sat on a high rank above the coils of the oven. I'm not hungry anymore. It is very much morning. If I lift this, we're all blinded. Yeah. That's why I have to sit in the dark every day. Wait, whenever I do this. As Sun looked closer through the dark room, the large table glistened from the layer of dried booze and clustered with cards that were being cast about in game. Guns and knives rested on the table to prevent cheating, and copper coins towered in the centre. With a sharp inhale of the aromatic spices and sizzling fats of the leg, Sun entered the chamber, dropping his shamar around his shoulders. Short yet unruly brown hair jutted wildly as though it had been restrained. A short beard clung to his chin and jawline, but was nowhere near as strong as Red's scruff. The young salvager had 2 vertically directed parallelograms, one longer than the other, tattooed on the left side of his chin that pointed to his nose, where 3 thin lines made scabby black chevrons were tattooed across the bridge of his nose. Rad. That's so cool. He brandished more tattoos than anyone else on board this crawler. They were faded, black, and made with geometrical shapes and bold lines. They spanned his left arm from hand to collarbone, and a lavish tribal sun featuring the symbol for an oxidizer in the centre mounted his right shoulder and continued onward towards his back, chest, belly, and legs. Oh my god, this dude is covered in tattoos. I'm trying not to stumble. I'm getting tired. I just realised I muted that when I said that. I think it's because I'm trying to read ahead. Because I'm naturally a fast reader, so I'm trying to like race ahead to see what's going to happen. His left nostril was fitted with 2 golden rings, and his left ear glistened with a large golden ring and bleached animal claws that hung on a tiny chain. The benefits of having a friend who was a tattoo apprentice. Your poor apprentice, Dave. The Rust brothers moved into the hold silently, watching the leg of lamb rotate while steaming with exotic aromas moving towards their beds. Sun sat, exhaling with another loud sigh as his body conformed to the matting, while Red leaned against the wall. A large pack lay behind their bunks against the curvature of the wall, and between their lockers made from strong leather that had cracked and dry-rotted by the ruinous sun. Barrels belonging to a multitude of guns protruded from one end. The bullets, Sun worn on his bandolier, went to the massive rifle resting in that pack. It was all that would prevent any more orders from getting close, and it was all else they could offer Woodbine besides their strong backs. The crawler sang with mechanical melodies, and the wind bellowed across the exhaust chute, but was otherwise silent. The electricity buzzed, and the rusty bearings of the rotisserie squealed as though they were begging for lubrication, only to be caked with fats and grease dripping from the leg of the lamb. Shadows danced the walls aimlessly, leaped as the plasma and fuel shifted in the lamps with the bounce of the crawler as it left the dry earth into the sandy wastes of the dry Atlantic. It was an intriguing sound with the way the sand blasted the metal hull compared to the dust and pebbles tapping against it. It sailed like rain upon a corrugated steel roof, hissing, and still reminded Sun of the only time he had ever experienced the phenomenon. Hi Caitlin, how you doing? Welcome to the show. I overdid my eyebrows this morning, so I feel like they could do the reading for me. They finally ate once slivers of lamb had been sliced and prepared inside a fold of crusty flatbread with spicy tomato sauce. They drank tea at first, but steadily moved into the alcohol once others began to indulge, and a new game of cards began to unfold amongst a number of them. An emaciated teenager with a sunken face named Five Threads appeared through the shadows of the doorway. Her eyes dilated with psychotropic drugs, and she laboured to sit at the table. She was the crew's metal worker, specialising mostly with welding and torch cutting, and a dedicated addict of a mind-altering drug, sap. One of the salvagers dealt her cards, but took them away when she was too intoxicated to even realise they sat before her. She sat perfectly still, her thumbs hooked on the breast pockets of her leather vest, as black pools where her eyes should be followed the light around the room. Oh my god, that's terrifying. They played in silence until the younger Rust grunted at the squeal of the steel door opening, and watched with sceptical eyes as a few of their new arrivals picked up back in Firewell City, moved in from their nightly prayer, his brow defining the shadows over his copper-coloured eyes. Swearing warning incoming, just a heads up. Fucking tribals. Can we trust them? A fat weasel of a salvager and their metal price barterer named Turkis bemoaned underneath his breath, motioning the group of wastelanders with his inebriated eyes. His fellow salvagers all turned, facing the door simultaneously, and followed as they moved towards the alluring smell of food. They were only 5, vagabonds and wanderers, who paid to be driven as far as possible into the desert. From there, they would go on foot to their own fate, and they paid well enough for Woodbine to entertain such an outlandish request. They were men and women living wildly beyond the edges of civilization, where freedom was truly a terrifying thing. It was a place Sun understood rather well compared to the famed walls of society, but those men and women were unpredictable, and fights broke out over petty offences between them as Sun had already witnessed. It mattered not, for the world was unpredictable. The vulnerable wells of social structure was unpredictable. Fights broke out over nudging an elbow in a crowded market. These wastelanders were wrapped in patched-up clothing that began to mould with sweat, wore armour crafted from salvaged items from the wasteland, and adorned trophies of great kills. One of the two women in the group wore teeth that Sun interpreted as human, and there was a small vertebrae in the center of her necklace with a platinum spark plug shoved within the center of it. Ha! That's so cool, but also kind of creepy. We don't have a choice, Red answered, turning back to his cards. We're bound together by travel. Even if there was someone here against us, I don't think they'd want to risk being thrown out into the Atlantic to die. Sun grunted, others grunted, sharing the resentment. Sun sat back in shadow out of the light radius of the tiny candle, centered on the glossy table, and sighed. He wasn't dissatisfied, but he wasn't content either. He dispassionately was without trust for these tribals, and the bizarre request for passage across the desert, without the cargo of camels or a buggy. He was especially distrusting of one called Vigil, who lurked quietly by himself even while surrounded by his companions. He was always watching, never talking, though Sun had heard his shy voice only once, and that was at introductions. It was as though he were a predator waiting to strike for the fact that his armor, made completely out of salvaged rubber tires, never came off. Maybe he was scared of these colonized desert, and the vast number of bandits and marauders that roamed these continental wastelands, or maybe there was another malicious reason. Woodbine said their money was good, and not to mind them without another thought. Either way, Sun was suspicious, but would not act without provocation. It was as his father had told him. Suspicions kept you alive, skeptics took the wiser path. He watched Vigil out the corner of his eye, the man equally watching back out the edges of his peripherals as well. His eyes then flashed to the sound of a cap unscrewing next to him. Peering over, he watched Red take a swig from his bottle, holding a transparent amber liquid made from the pale leaves that grew in the subterranean pools of fresh water. Allspice berries and sticks of cinnamon soaked at the bottom of the bottle, while fragments floated throughout. Yum. I know, right? Me too. Sun grinned, licking his lip as Red handed it to him. He sipped gingerly, the liquor burning his esophagus as it trailed down into his stomach. He coughed at first, before sipping more. Quietly, the brothers passed the bottle back and forth amongst the salvages, taking generous swigs until they felt it in their heads. The fire danced harder, with the wailings of the machine growing louder, as it worked to weave around the heavy dunes of dry Atlantic. Sun watched the movement of cards on the table, the collection of cash, and listened to the grumbling dissatisfaction as the card game rolled on into the night. Woo! Well done! That was chapter 1 of the Sandcastles of Atlantis. Oh man, dude, that was awesome. You can frickin' write, dude. I don't know, again, if you can hear that or not. Oh, there was some mouthfuls in there. That was a good workout, good warm-up. I know, right, Destin? He's disappeared. He may have had to go back to work. So hopefully I'll get it all time-stamped and all that fun stuff. Oh no, there he is! Yay! I'm so glad you could be here for the whole thing, especially because we had a bit of a mess up with the timing of everything. Mr. Fagan, that would be he's Sunfire Salvager on Twitter as well. If you've seen someone telling everyone to be a hurricane, that would be Dave. Which really, really helps sometimes. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me suss out these other ones. See how much longer I need for a break. Dude, I love... You have to go, but I had to support Dave. Destin, you were just so lovely. Thank you so much for popping in, my dude. And yeah, I know, right? Me too. And I'll let you know how Tavern goes. Okay. Just gonna check out the word counts and see if I want to just like relax. Did I not get an extra? I reckon this one's gonna be a really short one. It's literally like a page and a half. Yeah, I will. Just want to double check something real quick because I want to make sure that aha. That's, yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, no, that looks fine to me. This looks good. And this is definitely just double checking. Cool. So this is a psychological thriller. Yes, it is. Mr. Fagin, that is my fetish word. There's like, I think there's 2 scenes with sword fighting in her Crown of Fire, but I wanted to make sure that I did it right. So I ended up joining a longsword club for almost a year, but I haven't done it for ages. So it's been just kind of sitting there as a prop for a while. But I actually have someone that I met in the classes. He's actually coming over today to hang out. So he's like in my D&D group now, and we hang out, and it's good times. So yes, that is the sword behind me. I need to chuck a label on this email. My bad. It's not bad. I just wanted to make sure that I was writing it correctly. So I hope that if you read the sword fighting scenes in her Crown of Fire, I hope it comes off that I actually did like some research about sword fighting. Oh, just a sec. Oh, Mr. Fagin, look at this. Just knock that over. I got sent a copy of Omega Genesis, which I read out last episode. And get this, it's set in my hometown. It's set in Adelaide in South Australia, I think. Which is just like... And it's formatted really nicely as well. Like, it looks awesome. So, I'm keen to get to that. That was from Mr. Baart Groot. I'm very, very grateful. Alright. This is our psychological thriller. I reckon we can just get straight into it. There we go. This is our psychological thriller called Not Her by Rae Evergreen. So I think we're just going to get stuck into it. He liked his coffee black. No sugar, no cream. He never drank after 8 o'clock, and he didn't dare touch it a second before. 8 o'clock sharp was the deadline, and he'd usually finish the cup by 8:30. After skimming through his email and checking his texts, Darren would leave his spot by the cafe window, throw a few dollars down as a tip, and weave his way through the early morning bustle outside, where he would look both ways before crossing the street. It was Sunday, and the sky was an unfriendly shade of grey. The pavement was speckled with the dark spots of rain. A storm was brewing, and Darren was almost giddy with happiness. Well, I mean, we have that in common. I love storms. It was perfect. The time, the weather, the day, the smell of Chicago in the fall. Class wouldn't start until 9:30, giving him at least 50 minutes alone. Enough time for him to get back to his place to grab his gift for her. The past 6 months have been painful, watching her go about her life completely unaware of his presence. Today would be different. He could feel it. She would look at him, she would talk to him, she'd be left with no other option but to be in his life. It was his plan for her. Therefore, it was her only choice. And I'm already freaked out. We're 2 paragraphs in. No, it's fine. Keep reading. Yep. His 2010 Volvo, black with tinted windows, sat on the corner of Chicago Avenue. A gust of wind caused him to walk a bit faster, lifting his red scarf to protect his neck from the chill. Once he was settled in his car, seatbelt secured and heater blasting, Darren quickly revved the engine to life. Already his mind was drifting into the future. The thought of his little angel finally paying attention to him made him feel something close to ecstasy. A giggle suddenly escaped his lips, surprising him. It's freaking me out. Apparently. He shook himself, pursing his lips. He had to calm down, otherwise the plan would fall short of success. The blast of a horn shook him out of his reverie. Oh my god, does he get run over? He blinked, glancing in his rearview mirror at some young adolescent driving a Fiesta. Darren narrowed his eyes as the kid flipped him off. He honked again, and Darren hit the gas, realizing he'd been sitting idle at a green light. He glared, returning the gesture as the guy sped past him. You're in the wrong here, man. Small nuisances like that irritated Darren. Every day he had to deal with idiots like that. He especially loathed the times when he'd catch one flirting with his angel. Just thinking about it set his teeth on edge. It made him want to chase after that guy and kill him. Oh, this is going to end so well. This just bodes so well. Crap. Darren peered into his side view mirror to see Bryn Mawr Avenue getting smaller as he drove. He'd missed his turn. Distracted with his own mumbling, he didn't see the cop sitting on the side of the road as he made for a quick U-turn. Darren swore again, slamming his hand down on the wheel before pulling over, red and blue lights flashing behind him. He threw open his sun visor where he kept his insurance and registration papers. 30 minutes until class. This would leave him no time to complete his mission, which left him with no reason to see her until their class together. That was at 1 o'clock. He would be deprived of her face for another 3 hours and 30 minutes. Oh my god, is he going to kill the cop? As the cop's blurry form neared, Darren closed his eyes, relaxing his features, and settling into his usual facade of being a calm, simple man. Someone with no further purpose than following his own schedule and going about life alone with no desire for change. The cop rapped his knuckles on Darren's window. An apologetic smile spread across his face as he rolled it down. The cop took time to glance at Darren's simple black trousers, grey button-up and dark blazer. His gaze went from Darren's weak smile to the papers he clutched in his lap. This cop must have been having a bad morning too, since, without a word, he took Darren's papers and license, registered his info in the small ticket device he had, and handed it all back to him before waving farewell and striding back to his cruiser. Darren sighed. The cop drove back to his hiding spot, and Darren proceeded down the road without even looking at his street. The temptation to retrieve his gift still too great for him to resist if he risked even a glance. "Forgive me, Princess," he murmured. It seemed they would have to both wait until 1 to see each other again. I think that's the prologue. I think. I'm already freaked out. Okay. Let me just see how it... Okay. My throat's really today. "Come on, baby, please." Fawn scowled at her ex as he dogged her down the hallway. She broke up with him 2 weeks ago and he was still trying to act like nothing had ever happened. Sorry, I just stumbled over all of that. "I told you not to call me that," she snapped. "Leave me alone, Vic." He made to grab her arm, but she quickly moved away. When was he ever going to accept the fact they were never getting back together? Vic pursed his lips, frowning. "Baby, I'm sorry if I pushed us too far. He stepped closer, glancing in either direction before lowering his voice. "I don't want us to doubt our relationship, okay? I feel confident about us." He smiled, brown eyes searching her face for some sign of forgiveness. "Didn't you think we were good together? That we were happy?" Fawn shook her head, making Vic's smile fade. "That's not the point, Vic. We were happy, but... See?" Vic grabbed her shoulders. "You know we were happy, and we still can be. Just give me another chance." Ugh. Fawn tried to pull away, but he held on. Red flag. "You didn't let me finish. I admit we were happy, Victor. But that means nothing when our happiness doesn't seem to be enough for you." His brow furrowed. "Baby, of course our happiness is enough. I promise I won't push it again, okay? I just want us to be together." But Fawn was shaking her head, not listening to a word he said. She couldn't believe he was still trying to act like he had no idea what she was talking about. That even after she gave him a chance after chance to admit it, to tell her he was sorry for what was really bothering her, he refused to see that she knew. Or maybe he just didn't care. "I can't, Vic." She shrugged him off. "I have class." Fawn managed to take a few steps before Victor whirled around and smashed his mouth against hers, capturing her face between his hands. Ugh! Fawn balked, surprised, before shoving him off. He stumbled back, a few stray tawny locks falling into his eyes. That did it. "How dare you!" she screamed. "I know, Victor. I know that you cheated on me with Catherine, and I know you didn't go home that night I turned you down." Victor flinched, a look of shame casting his eyes downward. He slumped, a kid caught in the act. Fawn was disgusted that he tried to get away with it. Ugh. This poor chick, I feel like she's the princess. And I already feel really sorry for her. "I'm never going to date you again, and I don't want to speak to you ever again. Just stay the hell away from me." Victor looked up, opening his mouth as he reached for her, his caramel brown eyes pleading with her to listen to him still. Fawn just turned away and ran, clutching her books to her chest as the bell rang for her management class. "Just stay the hell away from me." Darren lifted his head, pausing mid-step on his way up the stairs when he heard her voice. He was just coming back from the bathroom, taking his time so he could sulk in private. This was the last thing he expected to hear. He started to smile, relieved their time apart had been cut short. But then he heard footsteps running in his direction. Without thinking, Darren leaped back down the stairs where he lunged towards the janitor's closet, a small wooden door with a golden plaque halfway hidden behind a stone pillar. Luckily it was unlocked, and Darren slipped inside just as he heard her coming down the stairs. Oh my god, this guy's so creepy. He waited, expecting her to continue down the hall. Instead, she stopped right outside, probably to lean against the pillar that was only 3 feet away from him. He held his breath, frozen, a sliver of dread running up his spine. Please don't come in here, he prayed. This is not how he wanted them to meet. It would ruin his plan and make things difficult. He scolded himself for even hiding in here in the first place. It sounded as if she were upset, and typically, girls didn't pay any mind to anyone when they were like that. Excuse me. He could have kept on walking and she would have walked right past him, just like always. Even though, in reality, he would have liked to stop her and pull her into his arms. She would cry into his chest, not saying anything because that's just how she was. She'd be grateful for him, and eventually, when she was calm, they'd talk about it. The sound of movement had Darren grabbing the doorknob, a cold sweat breaking out across his brow. Go away, Angel, go away. He never thought he'd want that, not with her, but she had to leave, now. He continued to press himself against the door just in case she tried to get in. She'd simply think it was locked and leave, hopefully. He heard her sniffle, muttering something under her breath before she hiccuped. His jaw clenched, anger simmering just below his level of calm. Someone had made her upset enough to cry. He made a mental note to find out who that was later. That guy's dead. He's out. After what seemed like hours, Darren heard her take a deep breath before saying, "Asshole." Then her footsteps echoed down the hall until he could no longer hear them. Darren let out a long breath, collapsing against the door. Don't worry, Angel. I'll make things better for you soon. Oh. Alright, I'm freaked out. That's awesome, Miss Evergreen. Let's see. I want to see if it's for sale. I don't think it's out yet. It seems to be a standalone. Oh my god, I want to finish reading that. I do enjoy a good psychological thriller. All of Gillian Flynn's books freaked me out in the best way. So, there's a lot of red flags. Obviously, intentionally placed, but yeah. Oh man, yeah, it was. That was good. I like that writing style. I can get down with that. The fact that I had such a visceral reaction to the second paragraph is a really good sign. Because I was just like, oh, he's so creepy. It's her only choice to be with me. Just ixnay on the orchestra. I gotta keep moving. Okay, so our last reading today is Raven's Call by Adam Chapman. This is a military action. I think, yay! I always enjoy our military actions. Okay. This is a fairly long one, so a heads up, I may cut it about halfway through. I've been finding that anything over 4,000 words takes about 45 minutes to narrate, which is intense. But this was submitted before I had any kind of word count on it, so totally makes sense. Okay. I think I've read a little bit of this one, that's why it seems familiar. Okay. We're going to keep moving into Raven's Call, Chapter 1 by Adam Chapman. War was in the air once again. People could feel it across the globe. The news bespoke of it in so many words, and soldiers were once again on the march. But to a few of those soldiers, it was a brisk morning across the border of South Africa. The sun was high in the sky, and a slight breeze passed through the air. For the soldiers of the United States Army 1st Armored Division, it was just another day since they had arrived, after the Brotherhood had taken over the continent, leaving it in chaos. For Staff Sergeant William Rivers, it was the calm before the storm, because the 1st Armoured was tasked to aid the South African military in fending off an anti-government force known simply as the Brotherhood. Based off of numerous intelligence reports that they were given to read over, the intelligence agencies had labelled the Brotherhood as a militant organisation that wanted to see the governments of Africa brought low and into a state of instability and extreme reformation. Recently, the whole world had been turned into a pot of upheaval, but for now, Staff Sergeant Rivers and the crew of the Jersey Devil were in South Africa waiting for the signal to advance. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Engines were idling, and dirt was being kicked up from the turning of tank treads as the company moved into formation. Rivers watched and listened as the crew of the Jersey Devil did system checks while the rest of the company idled by, doing the same. Crews were double-checking tank treads for any weak links, the same as his driver, Private Richard Brewster, a young man recently brought onto his crew who came from Tacoma, Washington, who had signed on for the college money in the hopes of a better life. His dark skin stood out against the tan camouflage of the tank paint as he wiped away a river of sweat from his brow. "All good, Brewster?" Rivers asked from the cupola at the top of the M3 Abrams battle tank. "Yeah, Chief, she's good to go," Brewster said, giving a thumbs up. "The Brotherhood won't know what hit 'em." "All right, load in. We might be going soon," Rivers said, looking out over the horizon as the others crawled across their machines. Brewster nodded and climbed to the front of the battle tank and lowered himself into the seat from the frontal hatch. Rivers lowered himself in, closing the top hatch, and listened to his gunner and his loader, Sergeant Albert Sawicki, a Polish immigrant from Chicago, Illinois, and Corporal Thomas Fujiwaka, another young man who came from Buffalo, New York. Both had joined for the same reasons as Brewster: money for a good education and to serve their country, and argued over which team was better, the Chicago Cubs or the New York Yankees. "How's our loadout, fellas?" Rivers asked them. "Good, Chief. We have a full load and ready for anything that comes around," Fujiwaka said. Fujikawa? There we go. I should have read their names before I did this. Taking his seat behind Rivers and looking at their loadout of tank shells. "She's ready, Chief." They carried a mixture of high explosive and armor-piercing and armor-piercing AV-7 to high-velocity AP, as well as cluster and shrapnel shells. A multitude of destructive power at their disposal. Satellite imaging was already showing 2 regiments' worth of armor heading in their direction, with another 3 regiments of infantry close behind. It was sure to be a tough fight ahead of them, but they were ready. "All right, good job, fellas. Let's close all hatches and button up," Rivers said, putting his helmet on over his short black hair. He looked through the scope, letting his eye take in some of the terrain, traversing it around the front arch. It was a barren landscape with lots of rocks and very little tree cover for infantry to hide behind. If they were lucky, the infantry would bypass the armoured battle that was sure to ensue. The engine turned over and roared to life in anticipation of the coming battle. "All units, this is Ballbreaker. We have go from command to begin moving towards waypoint Able. We are to hold position there. Elements of the Brotherhood should begin showing up shortly upon our arrival," Rivers heard Captain Hanks radio to all the tanks in the company. For weeks, the Brotherhood had been raiding weapon depots across the continent, stealing weapons and vehicles, amassing a massive force of armour and highly trained militia units, and building upon their already sizable and well-armed force. For once, the bickering between nations had come to a halt, as this new threat arose, recruiting from the common populace and the rich to fund them. Special operations had tried to track down and kill the leadership of the Brotherhood, but yielded no results in finding the elusive leader. Drone strikes had been even more ineffective, as electronic countermeasures saw ordnances miss their targets completely, or get shot down from the sky with a great amount of accuracy. When the Brotherhood made their declaration, they had advanced like a steamroller from all corners of the continent. Madagascar fell overnight, with most of Central and Eastern Africa falling to the Brotherhood days later. Major pockets of resistance were held at bay in the north, with Egypt leading the charge and guerrilla forces fighting tooth and nail in the east, primarily in Morocco. While in the southern region of Africa, all had fallen except South Africa, who had pleaded with the world governments to send aid. The United States and its allies had contributed to the defense of South Africa, sending us a whole carrier group that dropped millions of tons of ordnance in the opening days until ground forces could get into position. Regiments from the American 101st Airborne Division and the Chinese 43rd Division had parachuted in and fortified numerous fire bases to make way for the main troop deployments. I just want to go and play COD now. Rivers and his unit had come in during the second phase of reinforcements, when the fighting was already months old. They remembered hearing stories from some paratroopers from the 101st Airborne who had captured one of the It's getting late in the episode and I start to stumble at that point. Who had captured one of the Brotherhood at their staging point in Johannesburg. The paratroopers had said that the man they had captured raved that a dark star was rising, and the downfall of all religion and government would soon be upon the world. The paratroopers had seemed so spooked just telling the story that it had them worried, for the word of fanatics could be terrifying indeed. Rivers felt the tank judder as it chewed over the landscape, crushing rocks under its immense weight. That's a nice sentence. That's good. I like that. The chatter between the crews was short answers now, trying not to tie up the radio, relaying information to each other. Rivers could feel the tension in the Abrams, as his crew mentally prepared for what was coming. He could feel the tension in his body as well, his hand reflexively reaching for his throat where a turquoise pendant rested. It had been a gift from his grandmother, right before her passing as a memento of her. He never took it off, and reflexively reached for it while on a mission as a comfort to him. Hopefully, this fight would see the Brotherhood pushed back once again, as the fighting had been nothing but a defensive war for the Allied army. Over the months, more and more nations had contributed to fighting against the Brotherhood. Russia had sent an entire army group, with Germany, France, and the United Kingdom each sending their task forces to combat against the Brotherhood army. "How long to the waypoint?" Rivers asked, looking through his scope. "Probably another 2 minutes," Brewster said, reading the digital map next to him. "No sign of the Brotherhood yet." "All right. Keep an eye open and let me know if anything shows up," Rivers said, looking at the LED screen that showed a map of the region and the formation of the company. They rode in silence and listened to other crews speak over the radio, relaying positions and terrain markers as they rode along. Rivers looked down at Brewster and noticed him tense up as he looked out the armor plus window. Well, that's cool. I don't know what that is. "What's wrong, Private?" Rivers asked, looking out of his scope. "Speak up." "Out in the distance, about 1,200 yards, it looks like a cloud of black smoke," Brewster said, with confusion lacing his voice. "Whatever it is, it's big." Rivers adjusted his scope and saw the black smoke coming closer to the advancing tanks. "Ballbreaker, Jersey Devil here," he radioed. "Go ahead, Jersey Devil," Captain Hayes said, trying to drown out the chatter on the comms. "In the distance, there's a cloud of black smoke that's getting closer to us," Rivers said, as he heard the other tank crews begin to see the approaching cloud of smoke. Sorry, I had to hiccup. Before Captain Hayes could get a clear picture of what was hiding in the smoke, a great flash came from it. Hayes leaned back in his chair as a bright tracer round flew through the air. In a short breath of air, it pierced the top of Hayes' tank and exploded in the close confines, incinerating the entire crew and blowing out the ammunition magazine. The brown camouflage tank exploded in a fury of fire as sheets of armor landed in the sand. Oh. From the smoke, tanks of all models burst through, firing indiscriminately and mostly missing their targets, but still catching the American tanks unawares. The radio exploded in a torrent of shocked voices as they each saw their commander's tank go up in a cloud of fire. "All units, this is Lieutenant Markham. Pick your targets and fire at will," he yelled as his tank steamroller moved forward and fired an AP round, taking out an old Russian T-42. I know what the T-42 is. "You heard the man. Load an AP shell," Rivers yelled, traversing the scope and aiming at another T-42. "Loaded," Fujikawa yelled. "Sawiki, aim at that T-42 on our 10 o'clock at 700 yards, Rivers called, and listened as the turret traversed, aiming for the old model Russian tank. "I see them, Chief," Sawiki said, his voice still showing in his Polish accent. Not going to try and do a Polish accent. "Ready to fire on your command." "Fire!" Rivers yelled. Even before he could finish the word, the turret rocked as the shell burst forth and pierced the side armor of the T-42 tank, disabling the engine. "Load AP!" Fujikawa loaded the next shell as the spent cartridge slid out in a cloud of spent gases and clattered to the deck. "Fire!" The tank turret rocked again, sending the shell down range. Rivers watched as it pierced the turret and blew the top hatch out in a cloud of fire and smoke. "Good kill. Next target, half-track at 3 o'clock with the AT gun. Load AP," Rivers said, moving his scope and seeing the half-track vehicle fire a sabot shot round at one of the other tanks to disable it by hitting the track underneath the armoured skirt. Cool. I'm loving the tank terminology. I'm really enjoying it. "Loaded," Fujikawa yelled again. Rivers looked on as the turret moved, aiming for the light vehicle. "Eyes on, Chief," Sawiki said, ready to fire. "Fire!" The shell rocked the turret again as the explosive gases released the armoured shell piercing. It struck the driver's compartment and burst into the back bay, destroying the gun and blowing out the driver's compartment in a cloud of armoured shrapnel. "Good kill, Sawiki. Let's see what's next," Rivers said, turning the scope and seeing a profile of the tank in black smoke. It had a long and massive turret, and a huge armoured body to match the death-dealing cannon. "What is that thing?" Sawiki asked, seeing the beast of a tank as well. "I don't know," Rivers said, knowing that it was a model of a tank he had never seen before. "Load AP." It was a gamble for him to use one of those shells, for he had no idea the amount of armour that beast had. Hopefully, it would at least deter it from sticking around and give the others some breathing room. Already, the beast had claimed 2 more kills of the company, one of them being Steamroller and Lieutenant Markham. "Loaded, Chief," Fujikawa said. Brewster, move us along the side of it. Sawiki, aim for its turret, Rivers said, formulating his strategy. If I can get a clear shot, Chief, the smoke is making it hard for me to aim at it, Sawiki said, turning the turret to aim the barrel where he needed it to go. Give me a moment, Chief. Do what you can, Sawiki. Brewster, we there yet? Good to go, Chief, Brewster said, bringing the Jersey Devil into a position where the two tanks would be side by side with each other. It's like the Pirates of the Caribbean battle. Give me a moment, Chief. Do what you can. Wait, there we go. We're coming up beside it now. Ready, Sawiki? Rivers asked his gunner. Ready, Chief, Sawiki yelled. The turret aimed at the tank in the thick cloud of smoke. Fire. The tank jutted again as it shot forth another round at the mystery tank. Rivers watched with a bated breath as if in slow motion. The tank shell flew into the black cloud and struck the upper turret in a great flash of released energy. But he could already tell that it did not penetrate the obvious thick armor of the mystery tank. Thick armor? Did I say tank armor? The thick armor of the mystery tank. The AP shell merely bounced off the thick, armored turret. Once it did, the turret of the beast began to turn towards the Jersey Devil. Get us out of here, Brewster, Rivers yelled as the tank rocked, and the young driver tried to get them clear of the immediate threat. Command, this is Jersey Devil. Not sure what's left of chain of command, but we need immediate support, Rivers said, radioing to the command center further back down the lines. Reread you, Jersey Devil. Reinforcements are on the way. Just hold on, the command center radioed back. Roger, Command. ETA of reinforcements. Letting the others make quick decisions that would keep them alive from the smoke-wreathed beasts that were hunting the others down with its highly accurate fire and impunity. 1 minute to arrival, Jersey Devil. Who's left of the chain of command? Unknown, Command. Ballbreaker was the first to be taken out, and Steamroller not long after. I'm not so sure about Motor City Madman. I can't raise him on the radio. Silence greeted him as the Jersey Devil fired another round, striking a Brotherhood T-64 in the turret, disabling the main gun. Jersey Devil, assume overall command of the unit and continue to hold. Confirmed, Command. All units, this is Jersey Devil. I have overall command until we can get back into contact with Motor City Madman. A half-dozen confirmations that greeted him over the radio was all that remained of the company. Ow. They quickly reformed and continued to pick off Brotherhood tanks with every shot they fired. The Shadow tank coughed and destroyed another of the tanks in their company. Pieces of the armoured hull flew through the air in a great explosion. Then, before Rivers knew it, the Shadow tank began to pull away from the furious tank combat, leaving the Brotherhood forces to fight against the Army Abrams. The black cloud moved with it, hiding its form to all on the battlefield. Brotherhood tanks and armoured vehicles continued to push the American tank forces in the hope that they would break. Let's keep up the pressure. This might be what we need to break them, Rivers radioed to the rest of the company. The Jersey Devil coughed again and immolated another Brotherhood tank with an AP shell into the engine block. The battle remained a furious affair with rounds flying through the air and expelled at an exponential rate. In the span of another 20 seconds, another American tank took 2 hits to the turret, killing the commander and destroying the turret. We can't keep this up, Chief. We're almost out of AP shells and we're out of HE shells, Fujikawa said, slamming another sabot round into the chamber. We're going to need shells soon. Oi. Yeah, it gets intense from there. So I'm pretty sure this is for sale. I'm going to buy it. Because I want to know it. Yes, it is. Okay, so this is Raven's Call by Adam Chapman. I will pop a buy link down in the description. And it is available on Alpha International Enterprises. So I'll find where we can buy it and I'll pop it down in the description when this upload goes up. But, dude, that's intense. Like, for an opening chapter to be that intense, like, combat-wise, that's cool. And I do love military as well. So to have all, like, the military jargon and the tank jargon, like, I'm here for that. Okay, I have to sign off because the day it does arriveth. So I had so much fun reading these. I have so much to freaking read now. So it was, oh man. It was just so cool to be able to read Sandcastles of Atlantis because, like, I've heard about its like it going on for so long now. It was so cool to actually read the first chapter and get an idea of the theme and the setting and stuff like that. The psychological thriller from Rae Evergreen. Yeah, wow. Already freaking me out by the second paragraph. So eyes on that one. And we had a really fast-paced, intense first chapter of Raven's Call by Adam Chapman as well, which is military action. So we actually had a nice range of genres this episode, which was really fun. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I'll do all the links and timestamps and everything when it's all ready to go up. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for checking in. Thank you to everyone who came and hung out and supported the authors and chatted away with me. And I'll see you guys next Saturday. If you guys don't pop into stream at some point, I promise I'll stream again. Okay? Thank you so much. Bye.